Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the search for MH370. I am Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good afternoon to you, Richard.
And good evening to you, Jeffrey.
Viewers, this is episode MH370 Search Interrupted, episode 326. Before Richard gives us an update on Armada 8605, please like us, please hit the subscribe button below. Please consider supporting our channel, and many thanks for the great comments and questions. We will again be covering some of those today. Now, Ocean Infinity has interrupted the systematic search between 30 nautical miles and 50 nautical miles southeast of the 7th arc at latitude 34.6 south to focus on a particular area around 34.7 south, 94.8 east. Armada 8605 has not returned to the point of interest that they focused on yesterday, and there has been no confirmation officially that this is related to MH370. Both Richard and I will only state that a point of interest is MH370 related when officially confirmed as such. Armada 8606 is in Singapore and being fitted out with AUV and ROV equipment. And on that note, a special thank you to Jay, Griff and Pat OC in Singapore, who have been out taking photographs of 8606, and you'll be seeing some of those today. So thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. Now, Richard, what is Armada 8605 up to in the search area at the moment?
Well, Armada 8605 has completed the 11th cycle of AUV deployments and recoveries. All three AUVs are fully operational. And Ocean Infinity are operating in an area that was previously included in the Fugro bathymetric survey, but there were some gaps in the data. And Armada 8605 has now started the 12th cycle of AUV deployments and recoveries. The ocean depth is around 4,400 meters. That's 14,400 feet. But this is well within the capability of the Kongsberg Maritime Huygens 6000, which is rated down to 6,000 meter depth, 19,700 feet. And it's also within reach for the Saab EWROV, which is rated down to 5,500 meters.
Okay, so that is the micro view, Richard. What is the macro view of what is happening?
And a large scale oceanic level, we're showing a map of Armada 8605's position and the point of interest from yesterday. That's 1,969 kilometers or 1,063 nautical miles west of Fremantle in Australia on a bearing of 256 degrees true. This position is 75 kilometers or 40 nautical miles from the 7th arc and outside the previously searched areas, and also outside both the CISRO and UWA search areas from their drift analyses.
Now, you say Ocean Infinity has interrupted this systematic search to focus on a particular area. Why was that, in your view, Richard?
Since the return to the MH370 search area on the 30th of December last year, Armada 8605 had completed 9 cycles of AUV launch and recovery, each time with 3 AUVs. And they were moving steadily northeastwards. And that changed on the 15th of January, and it's remained different for the last 3 days. Armada 8605 has been focusing on a much smaller area with three further cycles of AUV launch and recovery. We're showing a screenshot of the various cycles, and you can see the progress from the third to the sixth to the ninth cycle.
Mm. But why did you conclude that there was a point of interest?
Well, on the 13th of January, an AUV picked up a point of interest at 0224 UTC. And on the 17th of January, an AUV was sent back to the same area at 0718 UTC. And where the two AUV paths intersected, I thought that could be a point of interest. However, this was not the case because Armada 8605 has not returned to this point of interest. And I would have expected, if it was a point of interest, they would have launched an ROV to take a closer look. But that hasn't happened either.
Now, the weather, of course, has been a big factor. What's the weather like at the moment in the search area? I think it might be a little bit gnarly.
Yep, it is indeed. The wave height will reach 5.8 meters at 1800 local time in the search area today, and the wave power will peak at 252 kilowatt per meter. When you imagine it's normally down at 20 or below 40, that's quite a wave power. And personally, I would rather be in port in Fremantle than out there in the middle of the southern Indian Ocean. And we're looking at windy.com, and they're predicting that things will calm down by tomorrow evening.
Mm.
But I think it's not going to be a pleasant night tonight out there in the ocean.
Now, with the help of our three photographers in Singapore, we've got a little bit of an insight into what Armada 8606 is doing in Singapore. Can you make sense of it all, Richard?
Yeah, they're showing a first picture of the cargo lined up on the quayside, waiting to be loaded onto Armada 8606. And I think they're in the process of installing AUVs and ROVs and a bunch of other equipment. And we're showing another screenshot, close up of the Seasonics gantry. The gantries are already installed, so it should not take too long to install the two containers on the stern for the AUVs and to install the ROVs under the gantries.
Mm.
So very grateful for the information from the viewers in Singapore.
Yes, they responded very quickly, which was fantastic. So thank you again. Now, we've got a very interesting question. I mean, most questions are very interesting, but this one's fascinating. From Warren De Silva. Could they have located the mineral diamond, which sank on or about the 17th or 18th of April 1991? Now, a reply came from J. Shepherd 7676. Interesting. I looked it up, and the last reported position was 30 degrees 0.21 south and 87.48 east, which is fairly far northwest of Armada's position now. I then replied to J. Shepherd saying, yet the Royal Australian Air Force searched due west of Perth 1,500 miles out, and that's from the ATSB report into the loss of the mineral diamond. So it's a very interesting situation, Richard.
Yeah, the mineral diamond is one of hundreds of ships that have disappeared without trace in the Indian Ocean. We're showing a map of the last known position, which is 435 nautical miles to the northwest of the point of interest we were looking at yesterday, and about 1,438 nautical miles from Fremantle. And as you mentioned, Jeffrey, the Royal Australian Air Force searched with a total of 3 P-3 Orion aircraft, and the US Navy searched from Diego Garcia with yet another P-3 Orion. And Diego Garcia is 1,628 nautical miles from the last known position. And all 4 aircraft were out between the 20th and the 24th of April, 1991. But unfortunately, they didn't find any trace of the ship. And if you go back in history, in 1611, the Dutch East India Company proposed a new, faster route for sailing ships from Holland via Cape Town to what was then known as the Dutch East Indies, and what we now call Indonesia. The Brouwer route, it's called, and you would head south from Cape Town to 37 degrees south to catch the roaring 40s, and then you would follow due east until you got to 105 degrees east longitude, and then you turn north. You had to, back then, you didn't have GPS, of course. You had to do dead reckoning and count how many miles you had traveled. And the instruction was to cover 1,000 mijlen. And the mijlen is the Dutch geographic mile. It's 7.4 kilometers and called the Duitse Holland Mijl. And so 1,000 of those, mijlen, is around 4,000 nautical miles. And the problem with the dead reckoning was it could be out by 2, 3, or 4% quite easily. And ships often turned north too late, and some ended up wrecked off the west coast of Australia. It is said that there is more treasure on the ocean seabed floor than in all the museums of the world.
Right. Interesting stat, that one.
Yeah.
So, Ian McNally, 7203, new development relayed in the calm, factual manner and very professional narration. Well done, both. Other channels would be creating hysterical hyperbole and peeing themselves with newfound self-importance. Keep up the good work, chaps. Well, we're not doing that, are we? And we've had a few interesting question and answers within the group. WJ Zoon, I watched your updates every day and they are concise and informative. Thank you. Question: if they find MH370 outside the Whisper area, would there be an explanation why the Whisper area was wrong? The Oz 2850, if the plane is found outside the Whisper area, I hope Richard will go back and try to find Whisper anomalies around the actual crash site at the suspected time of the crash. If he manages to detect a signal that could try to track the flight backwards in time and thus improve Whisper data analysis. Another reply came from Maestro F6N. In that case, it would corroborate the point that several prominent scientists have made that Whisper cannot be used to track airplanes. Another reply came back from W. Jan Zoon. Maestro, this disregards a previous statement from Richard on his blog that we have used WhisperNet data to track thousands of aircraft all over the globe. If I remember correctly, a study was performed whereby Whisper tracking was compared to ADS-B tracking and they lined up. I would love to hear more info about that study. This is why I wonder, if it is found outside the Whisper area, then the only thing to explain it is incorrect whisper tracking of some sort. Otherwise, if thousands of flights have been tracked successfully, MH370 should be in the whisper area. Interesting dialogue, Richard. Perhaps you can chime in on that one.
Yeah, well, I've got a website full of papers on the subject, so
Yeah.
if you want to get lost for several hours, be my guest. Um, Using whisper technology to detect and track aircraft is new. The idea of using whisper to detect and track MH370 was first put forward by Dr. Robert Westphal back in 2021. And in the last 4 years, we have developed and refined the technology to the point where we are now running large-scale tests on thousands of aircraft. And literally thousands have taken up our offer to download the software and try it for themselves. Unfortunately, there are a few dozen skeptics, and you always have a few when you have a new idea. And they refuse to even try it for themselves and are convinced that it can't possibly work. Let me explain the difficulty of using Whisper. Currently, there are around 25,000 aircraft in the air at any one time. And aircraft maintain a horizontal separation between 3 nautical miles and 50 nautical miles, depending on surveillance, airspace, and approvals. In order to track one particular aircraft, you have to discount that you're not picking up the other 24,999 aircraft. This, of course, is much easier in the Indian Ocean. Far fewer aircraft. When you compare the Indian Ocean with North America or Central Europe or the Middle East or Asia, the air traffic is much less dense. And on top of the 25,000 aircraft, in 2025, there were 6.4 million whisper signals every day. But back in 2014, when MH370 disappeared, there were only 210,000 whisper signals every day. So a much more careful analysis is required for MH370 in 2014 compared with tracking an aircraft today. And with only 210,000 signals in a 24-hour period, it's a lot more difficult than when you've got 6.4 million, which you do now. However, the most important goal is that MH370 is found, and the reason for its disappearance is understood, so that such a tragedy never happens again.
Yes, hear to that. Now, Joseph Schlau, 5611. In the 1960s, I had relatives who lived close to a flight path of an international airport. Like everyone in the day, television reception came through rabbit ear antennas. I can remember them. When a low plane came close overhead, there would always be static in the picture on their TV. Obvious interference of the TV signal every time a plane came over. So some 60 years later, when I read that Whisper is using signal disturbances from amateur radio signals, I find that very easy to understand the similarities.
Yeah, and you will find, Joseph, several videos explaining Whisper, including a live demonstration of the Whisper software and a live demonstration of how an aircraft can reflect radio waves. If you just look below this video, there's a whole section on Whisper.
Yes. Now, Irish Aussie 180. Hi, Jeffrey. I really enjoyed watching all your updates and thank you for them. I sit on the fence with Richard's whisper theory, as a lot of other experts think it's a load of crap. And I think Ocean Infinity thinks the same. If it's not found where they think it is, then they might as well search the Whisper area. In reply, Joseph, our colleague, comes back and says Whisper technology can at first seem complicated to understand, especially if you're not a radio person like me. Jeff's suggestion to go back and review the previous episodes dealing with Whisper is great advice. This is exactly how I went about educating myself on the concept to the point where I have a high level of confidence that it works. Set aside the information you may have seen in other programs for now and approach Whisper with a fresh perspective. That's a good perspective from Joseph.
Yeah. So, and I agree with Joseph. I'm actually not asking anyone to believe me. I'm asking people to try it out for themselves. It is complicated, and especially if you're not a radio person and do not have the appropriate computer and software. And it does take a lot of time to go through it all. But in answer to your point that Ocean Infinity think it's crap, I would say, why did Ocean Infinity then ask my co-author, Professor Simon Maskell, and myself to give them a presentation on Whisper and using Whisper to find MH370? And why did they subsequently invite Professor Simon Maskell to join their presentation of their current search proposal to the Malaysian Minister of Transport in Kuala Lumpur?
Exactly.
You don't do that if you think it's crap.
No. We Australians do use some very expressive language, Richard.
Oh, I'm highly offended, Jeffrey.
Yes, thought you would be. Now, Craig Crawford, 6749. Whisper is very intriguing as I believe it could be used in a manner to detect stealth aircraft. How interested is the US military in using Richard's method? Would he be able to tell us if he has been in contact with them? Also, if it is super valuable in detection, it would be better to downplay that ability. It opens up a whole lot of questions, like maybe MH370 is found in the Whisper, but it would be better if that information wasn't let out. Interesting conspiracy theory type question.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a good point. The military, of course, won't tell you their secrets. And what I can tell you is that I have signed at least a dozen non-disclosure agreements, and most of those are valid for the rest of my life. I'm not allowed to talk about certain things. The one thing I can say is the military are already using Whisper. And both my co-authors, Professor Simon Maskell and Dr. Hannes Kurtzi, are currently working on separate military projects. So there you go.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating, Richard, and certainly intriguing what Ocean Infinity is doing or whatnot. And of course, there's no confirmation from them whatsoever, and there's no statement from the Malaysian government either through the families of exactly what's going on at the moment. So everybody is in the dark on this, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there has got to be good reasons for all of that.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and yeah, absolutely. Now, Richard, thank you very much indeed for all your work in this analysis of exactly what's going on from our perspective or from the information and the facts that we have.
Yeah, very welcome.
And viewers, I'll be back tomorrow to give you a further update on what's happening with Armada 8605 and also if anything happens with Armada 8606. So please do subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep the comments coming and the questions coming. And do please support responsible journalism. And of course, also, please do subscribe to Richard's channel. And there's a link below to that. And I know that many thousands of you have already done so. So it's a great channel. So wherever you are in the world, please do enjoy what's left of the weekend. And I look forward to your company tomorrow. And stay safe. Thank you very much.